A stranger walked up to him, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I hate your father." And he didn't defend him. He said, "You're not wrong. Now pause." Imagine being the child in that moment. Not a cast member, not a headline, not a storyline, just a son. Most people think the hardest part of reality TV is the filming. The cameras, the edits, the drama. It's not. It's what happens when the cameras turn off, but the public doesn't. Paedon Brown isn't just dealing with a complicated father. He's dealing with a father the internet has already sentenced. And every time someone stops him in public, he's forced to sit in the jury box. Here's what makes this different. He wasn't ranting. He wasn't angry. He wasn't stirring drama. He sounded tired. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying something you didn't choose. And in a recent video recorded for a fan asking for advice about her own father, Paedon admitted something that hits deeper than any headline. He doesn't have answers. He said it plainly, "I have no advice." That's not rebellion. That's not bitterness. That's someone who's still trying to survive it himself. Let's zoom out for a second. After Garrison passed away, a lot of people hoped something would shift. Tragedy has a way of rearranging priorities. Maybe bridges would be rebuilt. Maybe walls would come down. But from Paedon's perspective, nothing fundamentally changed. And that realization, that's the part that hurts the most. Because hope is heavier than anger. When fans walk up and justify why they hate his father, he understands their reasoning. That's the psychological trap. He sees what they see. He's lived what they haven't, but he's still the son. So when someone says your dad is awful, it doesn't just land on Kody. It lands on the little boy who once idolized him. The teenager who wanted approval. The adult still trying to reconcile memory with reality. That kind of split loyalty does something to a person. It forces you to be strong in public and unravel in private. Paedon admitted that part too. In front of people, you have to be strong. Translation? There isn't space for him to break down out there, so he does it somewhere else. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The last time he physically spoke to his father, at his brother's funeral, let that sink in. A funeral. A moment where grief should soften everything. He hinted that even then, it didn't go the way it could have. No dramatic details, no explosive accusations, just that quiet implication. Sometimes silence is louder than rage. What struck me most wasn't what he said about his father. It was what he said about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. That's not something you say casually. That's something you repeat to yourself when you're trying not to drown. Forgiveness becomes survival, not reconciliation. Not reunion, survival. Here's the invisible cost no one talks about when kids grow up on reality TV. You don't just inherit your parents' last name. You inherit their public perception, and when that perception turns negative, you become collateral damage. Strangers feel entitled to unload their opinions onto you. They think they're attacking a character. But you're standing there as a child. Even as an adult, you're still someone's child. And there's another layer here that's easy to miss. He didn't trash his father. He didn't explode. He didn't weaponize the moment. He empathized with the fan. He told her she deserved better, while quietly admitting he's still figuring out what that means for himself. That's not villain energy. That's unresolved grief. So here's the real question. What does it do to someone when tragedy doesn't fix what you hoped it would? When even loss doesn't bring change? When you realize this might just be how it is? That's the moment hope shifts into acceptance. And acceptance can feel like defeat. If you were in his position, what would you do? Would you defend your parent publicly, even if you disagreed privately? Or would you say, "You're not wrong," and carry that weight yourself? And here's something harder. Is forgiveness always strength? Or sometimes just a way to cope? Paedon's story isn't just about one reality TV family. It's about what happens when family fractures under a spotlight. It's about being old enough to see your parent clearly, but still young enough to wish they were different. It's about standing in public while strangers debate the morality of the person who raised you, and realizing you don't get to opt out. He said he has no advice. Maybe that's the most honest thing anyone in that situation could say. Because sometimes the truth is this: you don't solve it, you carry it, and you learn how to live anyway. What would you do if the world hated your parent? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know. And if you've ever had to love someone who disappointed you publicly, you probably felt this one a little deeper. You know what makes this even heavier? He's not just dealing with a difficult dad. He's dealing with a dad who is still on television, still giving interviews, still shaping the narrative, still being watched. So every new episode, every headline, every clip that goes viral, it reopens everything. Grief can't scar over when it's constantly being scratched open. And think about this for a second. Most people who are estranged from a parent get distance, silence, space to process. Paedon doesn't get that. He gets strangers in grocery stores, DM, podcasts asking for commentary, fans wanting insider perspective. He becomes the unofficial spokesperson for a relationship he's still emotionally inside of. That's not closure. That's entrapment. There's also something psychologically brutal about agreeing with criticism of your own parent. When he said, "You're not wrong, it wasn't a mic drop moment." It was layered, because agreeing doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. You can intellectually understand someone's flaws and still emotionally crave their approval. Those two truths can exist at the same time. And that tension, that's what you heard in his voice. Not rage, not vengeance. Just fatigue. I keep thinking about that moment at the funeral. Shared loss is supposed to soften people. It's supposed to strip away ego. And yet, from what he implied, even that didn't break the stalemate. What does that do to a son when tragedy doesn't create reconciliation? At some point, hope stops being energizing and starts being exhausting. And that's when people begin to detach, not because they don't care, but because caring hurts too much. Here's the deeper issue nobody likes to say out loud. When parents choose public image over private repair, the children feel it. Even if that's not the intention. Every appearance, every storyline, every refusal to take accountability, it communicates something. And kids, even grown ones, are hyper aware of it. Now imagine being approached over and over with, "Your dad is terrible. You deserve better. I can't stand him." At first, maybe you argue. Then maybe you defend. Then maybe you explain. And eventually, you stop, not because you agree completely, but because you're tired. And tired people don't fight, they conserve. There's also this myth that once you're an adult, your parents' behavior doesn't impact you the same way. That's not true. You don't age out of wanting love. You don't graduate from needing repair. And you definitely don't become immune to public humiliation by association, especially when millions of people feel like they know your family. What Paedon revealed without directly saying it is this: he's grieving a father who is still alive. And that's a complicated kind of grief. Grief. Because there's no clean ending, no funeral for the relationship. No defined moment where you say, "This chapter is closed." It just lingers. And then there's forgiveness. Let's talk about that. When he said, "Forgiveness is for you," I didn't hear triumph. I heard self-preservation. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about absolving someone. It's about releasing yourself from waiting for apologies, waiting for change, waiting for acknowledgement. At some point, you either let go of the expectation or it consumes you. Maybe that's where he is. Not healed, not reconciled, but choosing not to be eaten alive by resentment. But here's the uncomfortable counter question. Should children always have to be the ones who forgive first? Or at all? Is that strength or survival adaptation? I'm genuinely curious what you think. Because this isn't just about one family. This is about anyone who's ever had to navigate loving someone publicly criticized or privately disappointing. There's something else that stood out. He didn't seem interested in revenge. He didn't seem interested in exposing secrets. That tells me something. Anger burns hot. Exhaustion burns low and steady. And exhaustion is harder to recover from. When you grow up on reality TV, you don't just share memories, you share trauma in real time. You don't get to rewrite childhood quietly. The internet archives it. forever. And for the Brown kids, that means their father's choices are not just personal, they're permanent, documented, replayed, commented on. So when someone says, why doesn't he just cut him off completely? It's not that simple. Cutting off a parent isn't like unfollowing someone. There's history, there's identity, there's a part of you that still carries their mannerisms, their laugh, their DNA. You can't sever that with a press release, and maybe that's the real cost. Not the loss of privacy, not the public criticism, but the ongoing emotional negotiation. Every day deciding, how much access do I allow? How much hope do I carry? How much disappointment can I tolerate? That's work. Invisible work. So here's where I'll leave you. If you were constantly approached by strangers criticizing someone you love, would you defend them no matter what? Or would you say, we're not wrong, and protect your own sanity? And if tragedy didn't change your family dynamic, would you keep hoping? Or would you finally let go? Drop your thoughts below. I want real conversation on this one, because behind the headlines, behind the show, there's just a son trying to figure out how to live with a father the world thinks it knows. And that's not a storyline. That's a life. That's a life.